In direct answer to the question, I think that the fact that it is a monolithic council makes it much more important that you do have some checks and balances, that you do have basically a non-conservative MP in the area. I'd suggest that the best person for that job is a Liberal Democrat MP. A number of you in here might think differently, but in specific reference, and Lois brought it up fantastically well, the 20 mile per hour, 20 is plenty campaign for Liberal Democrats are currently taking signatures on. It's going to be made part of our campaign over the rest of the general election campaign and through to the councils in 2018. We feel that it's incredibly important for these sorts of campaigns that are led by people who aren't on the council, people who aren't the MPs. We can do that as a community-based organisation. You can do it as a political party or as an individual collecting signatures on your road. That sort of thing will be much more effective if it's able to be championed by an MP who is not in league with the Conservative Council, is not in league with the GLA, which is controlled by the Mayor. Those things will be much more effective if they are not Conservative MP in this area, and basically you have much more effective checks and balances and much more chances for things being championed by the MP and being taken to the council and actually being achieved.
Thank you very much. Now, I've just been having a look through our Twitter feed. We're getting mainly comments, and it'd be quite nice to get a few questions from people maybe who aren't in the room, who weren't able to make it. So use the hashtag Battersea Question Time, and I'll see if I can, if some questions are sent through, I'll see if I can raise them. But I think we've got a question here from the gentleman in the front row, or second front row. Can we have a microphone down here, please? Thank you.
Perhaps you could give your name and then ask your question.
My name is Christian Svanjus. I'm a resident in Candlemaker's apartment just across the street here. So I know exactly what Will talks about when he mentioned the home-based state development, to which I vigorously object, but that topic's gone. I have a different question on a national level. Welfare spending accounts for a quarter of all public spending at national level. Way more than health, more than education. More than health, more than education, way more than defence.
Do you have a question that's specific to that?
Yes, okay, let's just say, what do the panelists feel, how do the panelists feel about that, and how would the welfare spending develop if your party was in government?
Lois, would you like to kick us off?
Okay. The Green Party has a very holistic view to the way we run our society. And you will find that if we solve many of the problems, like the housing problems, so that we aren't paying, so that we aren't paying housing benefits at escalated at huge rates into the hands of private landlords, but instead we're providing good housing, so that we aren't having to spend money on policing and handling things, but instead we're respecting our children properly. And also so that we are catching people before they fall too much. And that's where something like the National Health Service comes in. We would have a lot less to spend on, have to spend a lot less on welfare if there were the basics of life that we need, and those include health, and those include general well-being. So I think while we need to be a caring society, we cannot be a society that just ignores the welfare of those who haven't managed to climb up the ladder and earn wage amounts. We do have to accept that welfare is what holds our society together, and it's something that's worth spending money on.
Okay, thank you. Will, did you like to talk about welfare?
Yeah, so I think we need to break down welfare, because over the past few years welfare's got somewhat of a bad rap. As Lois says, some of it goes on housing benefit, and rents are very expensive here, so the housing benefit bill is rising. A lot of it goes on pensions, and none of us would say that we should be taking that away. And quite a bit of it goes on in-work benefits. So there's the Wandsworth Food Bank last year served 1,551 local people. 300 of those were in work. And if they're having to rely on the food bank, it's likely that many are also having to rely on in-work benefits. So raising the minimum wage is a very simple solution to that, to decrease the number of people that rely on in-work benefits. We discussed the housing market, I think previously reforming that too would cut down on the housing benefit.
So up, down, same. Neither of you have answered that yet.
No, well, I mean, it's sort of the welfare bill would come down as wages increase. I mean, I think that part of the welfare bill. But clearly we want to protect pensions, and all parties, I think.
Pensions are not included in that 25%.
We've got that, yeah. The housing benefit is, and if we tackle the challenges in the housing market, then that would come down too. There's so many variables here that, I think the welfare can stay roughly around the same.
I can't comment on your figures entirely, but I can say that welfare generally, which Conservatives have used to cover all spending by the state in terms of benefits, includes the state pension, which is almost half of spending on welfare. Let's just remember that. I can't comment on the 25% of spending. I think that sounds very, very high. I'm very surprised if it's quite that high. In terms of what we would do nationally in terms of welfare spending, the Conservatives have committed to £12 billion worth of welfare spending cuts over the next government. They've identified £1 billion worth of that. If they have openly talked about freezing the amount of spending per pupil in the education budget over the next 5 years, not raising it in line with inflation, which will cut massive amounts from the education budget, up to £79 million a year from the education budget here in Battersea, I think in itself. If the Conservatives are happy to talk about cutting the spending in education, yet they're not able to talk about the cuts to welfare, it terrifies me to think what those cuts might come from. And Jane, I open the rest of my answer to you to talk about where those welfare savings come from.
Well, let me just tell you a little story about before I was an elected member of Parliament in 2010, a young student nurse emailed me and said that when she was a single mum, 2 children, she wanted very much to provide for her family and get a skill. And she said when she went to work in the mornings on one of the Battersea's estates, people shouted abuse at her and laughed at her as she went to work. And people on her block shouted at her that she was a fool to go to work and she'd get more by staying at home. I don't want to live in a society that mocks a young woman who wants to get a profession for herself and care for her family and get into work. So that, I think that we did need to bring about significant welfare reform, and Conservatives and Liberal Democrats in government have done that. And it's about doing it in as fair a way as possible. If you talk to people like Peabody, as I've done over the last 5 years, they will tell you that the biggest determinant of intergenerational poverty is worklessness. So therefore, the ways in which you can affect welfare reform to help people back into work, there's nothing compassionate about abandoning people on welfare for years. I've had people in my surgeries who have never had the support to go back to work, but really seek the dignity of going to work, who really want the support if they're a disabled person to be able to go to work. But they've been abandoned just for years on welfare with no one supporting them. Universal credit is a very important reform. It seeks to abandon the cliff edges that penalise so many people trapped in the welfare system. Previously, if you worked 16 hours, you were entitled to a whole series of benefits. The minute you tipped over that 16 hours, you fell off a cliff edge in terms of benefit. Universal credit seeks to support people as they go back into work. As they increase their hours, benefits are tapered off, not cut off with a cliff edge. But, these are difficult choices. And Rachel Reeves, Will's national spokesman on these issues, is touring the country telling people that Labour will be tougher than the Conservatives on welfare. She even said her party was not the party of the unemployed. And there are difficult choices to be made by any party in government, and you're not always popular. And it isn't nice when your inbox fills up with people who are angry and cross about change. But I'm afraid that is the nature of what it means to take a difficult decision. And Labour nationally are telling us they will make those tough decisions. I've yet to hear what they will be.
Well, one can't eradicate poverty or hardship by throwing money at it. The only way that can be eradicated or lessened by significant degrees through education. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology's motto is mind and hand. One of the premier engineering and educational facilities in the world. I think we will agree on that. And what UKIP proposes to create wealth. We keep borrowing and taxing. The bedroom tax is appalling, it's abhorrent to me. It's shocking. And so is the mansion tax. Somebody's, for no fault of their own, has inherited a property and it's, you know, it's not their fault, is it? But why tax people? What I'm trying to get at, madam, is that we educate people to upskill themselves, to improve their employability, their chances of earning some good money, decent money, that we touched on before, the affordable housing. Now what UKIP proposes is that we reintroduce grammar schools, but we similarly have technical colleges running parallel. But the thing is, and I talked about the spirit earlier, it comes within us, we've got to accept that everybody is worthy of respect and they're treated the same. This thing about the financial sector earns buckets of money and they're stereotyped, it's a pity, it's a great pity, but that's within us to look at it differently. But the point is, those who are academically inclined will develop and they'll be nurtured, and that's great. Those who don't want to follow that sort of path may decide they can learn a skill, a very high level skill, a very high level skill, and there'll be in great demand. Those two run in parallel. This is the way to upskill our country as it used to be. There's nothing new. How do we develop through the Industrial Revolution and build to a great empire? It's within us, it's within everybody, within all our families. We are the greatest nation in the world. We still are, because we've got a strong mentality. Right. And we'll be there again.